This is an excerpt from a longer video lesson about how to write the 6 main text types for IGCSE English. If you would like to watch the full video lesson, which is 1 hour and 15 minutes long, you'll find it linked below. Get the worksheet, PowerPoint, and even take a review quiz, as well as find more exclusive content to help you with your exams on my website. Whether you're a teacher or a student, you'll find something over there that can help you. Now, all of the text types are based on this story right here. I'll flash it up on the screen. If you're not familiar, feel free to pause and read, but otherwise, let's get into it. Moving on to interviews now. Here is our interview prompt. Think about the VORP. That's voice, audience, register, purpose, and format. Imagine you are a presenter at a local radio station. You interview the headmaster of Elmwood High about the events of that day. Write the words of the interview. Take a look at this prompt. What is the VORP? The voice then is headmaster. This is the main thing that you're going to have to write as. Yes, there's a presenter, but Cambridge will give you those questions, so you are not the presenter. Who is the audience? Well, the audience is people who listen to the local radio show, so local listeners is your audience. Therefore, the register, well, we've got a headmaster, we've got radio, and we've got local audience. Well, together I would say that's more formal, more polite. But then there's also this spoken element, right, of two people having a conversation, which might make it slightly more semi-formal. It depends on what kind of voice you want to create for the headmaster, like what sort of character he would appear to be in the extract. Now, obviously, for this one, we haven't got an extract, so you can make that up. The purpose is you're talking about the events of the day, so the purpose is to inform, and the format is an interview. So overall, we have got like a slightly more formal tone, but it is spoken, so we can have a little bit of banter back and forth between the interviewer and the interviewee. Now, for Cambridge, when they ask you to write an interview, that is 9 times out of 10 a radio interview or a TV interview. That's what you're going to be asked to write. They won't ask you to write a job interview. So it tends to be that you will interview a character in the text that you've been given, and often that isn't the main character, so make sure you check carefully who you're writing as. Essentially, you're thinking about a podcast tone. It's a talk between two people on a given topic. And so the formality will vary, it will depend on the text, the characters that you're being asked to write about, and the topic that you've been given. But because it's spoken, interviews do tend to be more often than not a semi-formal type of text. For interview writing, Cambridge will give you 3 questions. So they will give you the questions that the interviewer will ask, and then your job is to write the responses. Those 3 questions are your bullet points. So they're very important for your reading marks. Therefore, you should copy down those questions exactly. Don't change them, right? Don't add in your own questions because then you're going to go off topic and you're going to get a lower reading mark. And your interviewee should do 95% of the talking because that's where you're going to pick up your reading marks. How should you actually write it? Well, you should lay it out like a script, like this. So you'll put the person's name and colons, leave a little bit of a space, and then write down what they say. Example, Andy. So Kayla, tell me, why do you love English so much? Kayla, well, because of Miss O'Rourke, of course. So this is how it should look, like this, like a speech. If you want to, you can also add in stage directions, but it's not needed if you don't want. Do this by using brackets like laughs, nods, claps, something like that. Again, you don't have to do it, but it does sound quite nice. It does sound quite realistic for an interview tone. Now, because it's spoken, you should use spoken language. So you can use filler words or thinking words like, well, I guess. I hadn't thought of that before. But don't do that too much or it will start to sound weird. And you can also use punctuation to make your writing sound more spoken. For example, you can use ellipses to show a pause or a dash to show that the speaker has changed the direction in their sentence. For example, Mark Jank was accused, well, let's not bother with that. And you put the dash in between to show he's changing the topic. You can also use an exclamation mark to place emphasis or show excitement, but again, don't use these punctuation marks too much or it will start to sound a little bit strange. As with speech writing, don't forget to use personal pronouns because the interviewee and interviewer, they're speaking to each other, right? It's 2 people in conversation. So you should try to make it sound like a real conversation by using you, your, and yours. Have your interviewee speak directly to the interviewer. For example, you really can't imagine. Don't look so surprised, right? So 2 people talking to each other. Here are some useful phrases that you can use for interview writing. For those tuning in, I want you to consider. Listeners, keep this in mind as we discuss. To all of you out there, I encourage you to think about. If you're listening right now, I want you to imagine. To everyone joining us, I'm sure you'll find this interesting. I'm sure many of you can relate to. As you're listening, you might be wondering. I want to share a perspective with you that could resonate with some of you. You might be surprised to learn that. Consider this a takeaway for each and every one of you. That's an excellent question. Here's my take on it. To answer your question, let me explain. Your question really touches on something I'm very passionate about. Funny you should ask, because the idea actually came to me when. Now let's take a look at an example interview. Interviewer. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have a rather intriguing story for you today. Fresh from the halls of Elmwood High School, joining us is the school's head teacher, Mr. Reginald Wellington. Welcome, Mr. Wellington. So remember, for Cambridge, you just copy out their questions, but I couldn't resist. I had to create my own voice. Mr. Wellington. Thank you, my dear. It's always such a pleasure to share my wisdom and insights with the public. Mr. Wellington, the incident that unfolded at your school has everyone talking. Could you shed some light on the events that transpired during the fire alarm incident? Ah, yes, the fiery escape, as they're calling it. You see, my dear, it all started with our darling Miss Salmon, a teacher who seemed to have lost her way in the labyrinth of classroom management. She was facing a rather daunting observation and, well, I suppose she thought pulling the fire alarm was the best way to avoid the impending scrutiny. Quite the audacious move, I must say. It certainly was a dramatic turn of events. Speaking of which, the blame initially fell on a Year 9 student, Mark Jang. How did that happen, and what does this incident tell us about the school's disciplinary measures? Ah, Mark Jang, poor lad. It was a classic case of misunderstanding, I assure you. In the chaos that ensued, the poor boy found himself in the spotlight, not for his own doing, mind you. It's a reminder that we must always be thorough in our investigations, a lesson we shall take to our heart in our ongoing efforts to maintain discipline and order within our beloved institution. Of course, of course. And who was it that accused Mark then? Never mind that now, all water under the bridge, as they say. It was him. And finally, Mr. Wellington, the resignation of Miss Salmon was a surprising development. How do you see this incident affecting the future of Elmwood High School? Well, my dear, I believe that every cloud has a silver lining, and Miss Salmon's resignation, while abrupt, may offer an opportunity for fresh ideas and a renewed sense of dedication within our staff. It's crucial that we strive for excellence, and this incident has certainly provided us with a moment for reflection. The future of Elmwood High School, rest assured, will continue to shine brighter than ever before. Thank you, Mr. Wellington, for your insights into this fascinating tale from Elmwood High School. It seems the dramatic world of education always keeps us on our toes. Now, if we take a look and have a think about it, who's the local audience? Well, it's probably going to be parents or potential parents. So obviously, Mr. Wellington has to make the incident seem less serious than it was and reassure the local listeners, our school is still great, still send your kids here, right? So we've got kind of like an ulterior motive from the head teacher. And so over here, he doesn't want to admit blame, right? That it was him that unjustly accused a student. And he's saying the future of Elmwood High School is going to shine brighter than ever before. So we've got this kind of reassurance to the audience. I wanted to create like a slightly patronizing tone, like for the head teacher. So we can see the whole way through he's referring to the interviewer as my dear, which is quite patronizing and a bit sexist. And we've also got these filler words like well, while he thinks of what to say. We can see that the interviewer is referring to Mr. Wellington by name, which creates a sense of relationship between the two speakers. And again, this spoken tone here in of course, and Mark Jang, poor lad. And again here we've also got the thinking word, yes, the fire escape as they're calling it. Here talking to the interviewer directly again, you see, my dear. Another thinking word here with the well. She was facing a rather daunting observation and, well, I suppose, as he thinks. And again, we've got an exclamation mark here to add a more spoken tone to it as well. If you liked this video lesson and you want more content like this, If you want PowerPoints, worksheets, quizzes, and lots of different resources to help you with your studies, head on over to talkly.co.uk where you'll find more materials like this for teachers and students. Thank you so much for your attention today, and I'll see you there.